Hello, my friends, and welcome. Today is Friday, January 6th, so we're coming into the celebration of the Three Kings, or Epiphany, and it's the end of our Christmas season, and as of Monday, I am back to being a full-time graduate school, so my schedule is going to get really busy, but I'm very committed to the things that not only am I learning in school, but I'm also learning outside of school. And so there's a few things, but I'll say the three major things that I'm looking to learn right now is one, how to create great video. So whether it's through streaming, through creating pre-recorded and edited videos, and doing shorts, I want to learn to be a qualified creator. The second thing I'm learning is data science. Now, some of it is through my academic program, but most of that is focused on GIS, so digital maps and graphic information sciences. And I'm very interested in just really a really good data visualizer. One of my classes this coming semester is cartography and data visualization, so I'm sure I will get some of it, but I really want to know how to find data sets, work with data sets, match data sets, and create great visualizations. That's the area of data science that I'm particularly interested in at this time. Not to say that that won't branch off into other aspects of machine learning, AI, deep learning, neural networks, other things, but right now this is sort of my container is data visualization, data analysis, but with a visual or mapped component. And then the other part of what I want to learn and just continue my support is I've been supporting Ukraine since the start of the invasion with a TikTok channel dedicated to that, but I'd now like to expand my support into language learning, and I'm putting a lot of attention into learning both Russian and Ukrainian, and I'm specifically creating a stream that is dedicated to learning and practicing Ukrainian and building a community around that. So my 12:30 p.m. streams are focused on data science Eastern time, and my 9:30 p.m. Eastern time streams are focused on foreign language learning. I don't know how many times a week I will realistically be able to show up. I was very pleased at the start of this new year. I was able to be here every day, so I'm happy about that. And I actually just purchased a new camera, so I'm going to set that up so now I can not only have better video, better audio, but also can do two cameras. So I'm just learning new editing software. Again, there's a lot just that is in this rollout. So at this point, these streams are not being promoted. I'm just trying to learn how to do them. And so the concept of data science and the pieces that I want to learn are focused around Python, RStudio, Tableau, Advanced Excel, and SQL. And so that's kind of the order that I want to be kind of getting functional in all of those, and then sort of starting from beginner and sort of working our way up, and then sort of knowing what the right tool for the job is. So I did have a brief introduction to Python in my spring semester. Not Python, a brief introduction to RStudio in my spring semester. And I've been working with ArcGIS Pro, but I'm really new to Python, and so I found the Google class. So what I'd like to do today and in the next few sessions is go through this material together. And so there's two parts of it. There's the text, there's three parts of it. The first is the text, the second is the video that are provided from this 2-day intensive that they held at Google for Google employees, and then they've made this content available through a Creative Commons license. And then they have exercises. Now, in setting up, like when I open Python, and I'm now, I believe, working with Python 3.12 is what my system is running. When I open Python, I get the black frame, but I know that everybody's sort of saying work with an interpreter. And so there's Notepad++, and there's a JI Edit, which is good for PC and Mac. I'm on a PC. And there's another one that was also good for Mac. JI Edit could work for both, but my computer was saying it didn't have the Java 11 environment that it needed. So the two options I seem to have right now are Visual Code Studio or Notepad++. So one of the things I want to get over the next couple of days is really making sure I have the right environment. But because I don't right now, I'm not going to do the exercises just yet. That, and also I did open the exercises in the interpreters and was realizing that they currently were feeling a bit beyond my skill level. So I want to make sure I have the interpreter and a better base. So I just want to lean in and today just sort of say, let's just go continuing on what we've been doing for this past week, which is going into the into the course materials and just working our way through it. So I am wanting to get our just go back. So two things we're going to be doing today, and basically typically I'm here for an hour every day. Okay, so that is that's slow. Okay, so maybe fun. Okay, so we're going to add a browser. And the URL is right here. 1920 1080. Okay. Let's see if I can just getting wanting to share my screen, but again still learning how to use this software, and that it's not adding it just yet. Window capture. Okay, so it's immediately going to that. We're going to take that and delete that. The browser doesn't want to show up. Browser, why don't you want to show up? So we're going to delete that. Delete that. I was watching a video yesterday about saying at the beginning of streaming, they're like, don't have tech issues. But I don't get that I have tech issues until I go live, because I test things and they seem to work until I actually go live, and then they don't work. So I am having to sort of learn on the fly, which is again another reason why I'm not really promoting these streams just yet until I actually figure this out. No, that's not what I want. I should be totally able to share my screen. And it's just not letting me do that. Okay, so we're going to try it one more way. Because I should be able to totally share my screen. And that is, I'm going to go to YouTube, or actually I'm going to the introductory video.
Formally, but I never really explained them, so I want.
And we are going to back up just a little bit from where we were yesterday, and then we will continue on from where we were yesterday. So let me see if it allows me to media source. See if it allows me to share this YouTube channel. Nope, it doesn't want to do that. I'm really not sure why it's not cooperating for any sort of screen share right now. And I've done tons of research now to sort of see where the best place for me to stream from is, and everybody is saying OBS, OBS, OBS. So I am learning at... Okay. I think I'm getting closer to figuring this out. So this one's going to order, move up, and there we go. So we're going to go over to... So the only problem is I'm not going to be able to see it once I go over, but we'll give it a go. I think you're going to end up with a lot of extraneous stuff on this. So actually, maybe it will work. So here we are, and then we're going to go over here to the video, and we're going to play it.
Inline argument. So that was sys.argv, and then it turns out the 0th element refers to the script itself, which is this is just an ancient convention. So the element that I really care about is sys.argv1 there. So I'm going to save that, and I'll see if this works. So I'll say hello Alice. Oh, check it out. All right, so now it prints hello Alice. So let's see the results there. All right, so let me talk a little bit. I just want to use this as a vehicle to kind of talk about what's going on syntactically with Python. So let's sort of go through this top to bottom. So I gave this thing an argument called name. Notice, just as with the variables, I didn't have to declare that this was a string or an int or anything like that. I just say, well, whatever. It's just called name, and it just points to whatever it points to. So arguments and variables are similar. They're both just names that point to some value. Then in Python, when you want to set off a block of code, it very often uses the colon, as you see here. So I'm going to say define this function, and there's a colon. Now I'm going to go to the next line, and I'm going to have however many lines of code I want to have. Now this brings us to Python's most sort of famous syntactic feature, which is that Python does not have any left curly brace, right curly brace notion to enclose a block of code. Instead, Python uses indentation. So notice under the def here, so the Google standard is to indent by 2 spaces, and so that's a fine thing to do for today. So under the def, this first line is indented by 2, and this next line is indented by 2, so that's what's putting them inside of that function. And there just isn't a left curly brace or right curly brace I type that goes in there. So this is, it's a little bit controversial. I'll just give you my take on it. I think the idea is that if we were writing this in Java, here I'll disturb all the real Python people here. I don't know. Suppose it looked like this. All right. Suppose we had that, right? We're blocking out the code that makes this function, but we would have indented, like we would have had one set of brain cells that was managing the curly braces and putting them in right. But then we also would have indented correctly, right? And we were raised right, and it looks terrible. So of course we would have indented correctly as well. And that would have been a second set of brain cells. So we would have been maintaining these two things kind of in parallel. But if you sort of think about it, those 2 bits of syntax would have been reflecting the same piece of information. They always would have moved in tandem. And so the Python idea is like, having 2 bits of syntax that represent the same thing, and then we're just trying to keep them in sync, is dumb. Like, we want to just do the quickest, most minimal, clean thing, and that's kind of what Python looks like. And so it's like, you know what? Let's just get rid of the curly braces. If we want to look right, so I'll put the colon back there. Let's just have the indentation define how the blocks of code go. So I'll fill this function out to be a little longer, so you get a better feel for what indentation looks like. My advice about this is that it seems extremely foreign, weird, and slightly wrong for about the first 11 minutes that you use it. And then it's just fine. I mean, it's just basically very logical and reasonable. It's kind of visual, and so it very quickly just seems normal. So I think it's not with that. All right. So let me I want to make this function a little longer. That'll allow me to demonstrate the indentation a little more. Yeah. Oh, so yeah, the question is, where does the space come? That's a quality of the print that when you separate things with a comma, it puts a single space between them. If I wanted to bunch those together, I could have done a plus. The plus in string space just crams them together. So all right. So let me show you, so I want to make this a little fancier here. I'm going to put in an if statement. So let's see, I'll say let's say if name, and I'll just end up showing you how Booleans and stuff work. If name is, let's say, Alice, then we'll say, I'm just going to, this won't be very meaningful. Here, we'll add some question marks on there. I'll just start at the top here. So this is what an if statement looks like. You say if, and then you have the test, and then there's a colon, and then it has a whatever, blocking statements underneath it. Now, just to give it this idea of indentation, if I wanted to also do multiple things, I could say, I could say, alert, Alice mode here or something. The fact that those two lines, the print alert and these two lines, are underneath the if, that's what's putting them, under the control of that if statement. And then here, when this line is indented back to out, that's what's putting the outside if statement. So this is what it means to say that the indentation is significant, right? Where something is placed, left, right, does control what the code means. So that's the form part. All right, so let's talk about this if statement. Here I'm using equals equals. Equals equals does sort of an intuitive, deep comparison. In some languages, you kind of have to worry, well, is this a pointer comparison or whatever? In Python, you do not have to have that worry. Equals equals does what I would describe as a kind of a real comparison. It takes the thing on the left, the thing on the right, and it really fleshes them out and compares them. So it works for integers, it works for strings. Later on, I'll show you, it works for entire lists. So you could have relatively big data structures and just compare them with equals equals, which you can still get a reasonable result. In C++ or Java, you always got to have the parentheses around the test. In Python, the parentheses are not required. And then, so it's regarded as the best Python style to not put them in. It's a little bit like, it's like speaking with your sort of vulgar accent. Like if you put the parens in, then everyone's like, oh, I see, one of you, C++ refugees. So you can sort of show off your modernity by like not putting them in. If you want to have a logical connectives, this is a little bit strange. The logical connectives are spelled out with letters. So or is OR, and is AND, and not is a little hard to say in English. Not isn't the thing above the one on the keyboard, it's NOT. So I'll say, if name is, name. So finally, I'll put an else in here just to show off. So I'll say else, colon. What do we do in the else case? Else. Oops. Okay. So now you can sort of see the indentation really working here. We've got this kind of modest Python program. I'll just mention, all the regular Boolean stuff. There's less than, and equal, and all the kind of regular Boolean stuff works in Python as it does in other languages. There are Boolean true and false values, although those aren't used very often. The rule in Python is that if you have a pointer to something, there's a few kind of null values that count as false. So if a number is 0, that counts as false. If a string is the empty string, that counts as false. And any other value, or if the string is not empty, or if a number is not 0, then those count as true. So that's similar to how other languages do it. All right, so let me just try running this a little bit. So I guess if I run this, and I say, hello, Alice, then my if statement kicks in, so I get all those question marks, and then the line below kicks in, and I go, it's pretty goofy looking output. But hey, at least it works. So now I'm going to show you, I'm going to make a very sweeping claim about how Python works. Python does everything at the last possible second. So in C++ or Java, it takes your code and it compiles it, and it checks it in a million different ways, and you might get a lot of different compile errors. And then only after all that compile checking, then it runs it. That's not how Python works. When you feed your Python code, like my hello.py, into Python, it just looks at it in the most superficial way. It checks pretty much nothing, and it just starts running it. And each line it gets to, it evaluates that line kind of in the moment. So in the moment, it looks at what those variables point to, and says, oh, you've got a string and an int here, and it just tries to do it just at the last possible second. And only at that second does it notice if there's an error. maybe a variable is not defined, or you're calling a function that doesn't exist, or you're dividing by 0. I mean, all these, whatever, bugs. So to highlight that, I want to try calling a function here. I'm going to call a function called does not exist. Here, I'll pass in the name. Now, there is no such function. I haven't defined it. There is not a built-in called does not exist. It's just wrong. All right, that else is just incorrect. This does demonstrate a deep quality of Python. Now, if I call hello.py and pass Alice, you know what? It's going to work fine. Right? This is what I mean. What happens is Python only checks a line when it runs that line. All right, and so because it just kind of never hit this else, whatever, it just kind of never noticed that was wrong. Now, in the great, as we understand the universe, you don't get something for nothing. Well, in Python, it means there's not a big barrier between you and just like your code running. And that can be a real virtue in a lot of cases. But also, you're giving up a certain amount of checking that some languages might have done. This also means that in a more industrial sense, because Python doesn't really check a lot of compile time, for industrial code, it's more important probably to have good unit test coverage. Like you actually need to have run all the lines to see if they're correct. Now, for our 2 days, we're going to work on things that are just kind of medium-sized little utilities where, if they're incorrect, you can see pretty clearly. And so for that kind of problem, Python is a really good map. So let me show you, I think I'm going to go back to the Python interpreter here. And I've sort of used strings and lists and a few things informally, but I never really explained them. So I want to kind of slow down a little bit here and actually talk about how some of these things work. So the Python string type is enclosed in quotes. So there's like the string hello I've done. You can also actually put the string in double quotes, or here I'll do a different one. Isn't. Oops. That works the same. There's not a deep semantic difference. It's just your choice. You can either use single quotes or double quotes. The one difference is that inside of a double quoted string, as I have here, you can put a single quote, like isn't there, and it just works. And likewise, if I use single quotes on the outside, I can put a double quote inside. There's not a real strong preference. You can kind of use whichever one you prefer. I tend to use the single quote one. It looks a little more Python-y. Yeah.
You want to include single and double quoted?
Excellent question. So if you want to, let's say I'll do a double quoted one, and I want to put a double quote inside of it. So I'll say like, what would be something right? I'd say like, what you do is you put a backtick in front of it. So I'd say I love this exercise. Yeah. Or alternately, I could have done it instead of single quote. All right. So I showed you. Let's see. What is A? Isn't. So I showed you the len. Oops. The len function earlier. So strings also, as I think I've already done, the plus works. So if I say A plus, yay, then that puts it together. Plus puts strings together to make a bigger string. Strings in Python are what is called immutable. And that means that once a string is created, it never changes. It's like a little read-only thing. This is a pretty modern style. It's turned out to be pretty popular in a lot of languages. So for example, when I did that little plus there, if I look at the original A, it's unchanged. All right? So whenever anything you do with strings, lowercase, uppercase, I'm going to show you a few things, it's always creating new strings to sort of show you the result, but the original string, it's always left unchanged. So maybe what I'll do is I'll set A to, let's say, uppercase hello. Now, it turns out there are a bunch of built-in string, what are called methods. And I'll show you one now. So for example, there's one called lower. And what that does is it makes the lowercase version of a string. Now, the reason this is called a method, and this is basic object-oriented programming, just is, there's a few things that are very easy, and that's what we're going to work on for the next couple of days. This points to the string, or I can think of it as a string object. And with this syntax where I say pointer to thing, dot, and then the name of the method I want to run, what that means is run that method on that object. So if I had B is equal to like yay, So if I say b.lower, okay, well, it runs it on that string. Whereas when I said a.lower, then it ran it on it. So that's basically, it's a different syntax for running a piece of code called a method on an object. And that's hopefully that's going to be pretty good. So what I was saying before is that strings are immutable. They're never changed. So for example, if I look at the original, so here, I'll do it again. It's like, if I say a.lower, that's not changing a, that's returning to me a new string that's the lowercase version I want. And if I look at the original a, it's unchanged. Now, Python there are many built-in string methods. I showed you lower. I can show you, there's like a find, just for example. So if I say a.find of e, and what that does is it searches in the string for the first occurrence of that, and then returns to me the index. Now, in reality, there are probably dozens of built-in string methods, and I'm not going to demo them all in lecture. I just want you to know that there are a lot of built-in ones. And either you could look at the PyQuick handout where it talks about some of the common ones, or you could type, in Google, type Python string, or maybe Python string method, and go to the page where it lists them all. One of the reasons that software is a lot more productive than it was, say, 15 years ago, is that we've gotten better at having what I think of as sort of built-in code, like code you didn't write, but that you can call, and it just solves basic problems for you, sort of code reuse. And Python, like any modern language, actually has a lot of code already done for you. And so one of the basic skills, I think of it as kind of living higher on the food chain, is when you're solving a problem, you don't necessarily like, I'm now going to manually write a loop to solve that. Very often your first instinct is to find a module and dig around a little bit to find some code that somebody else already wrote, it's already done, and you're going to build your solution on top of that. That's sort of a good modern technique, and it's an excellent Python technique. Python has a lot of built-in stuff, and I will, over the course of 2 days, I will certainly point you where a lot of that code lives. All right. So I haven't talked about how to look inside of a string. It turns out you can use square brackets to look inside of a string. So if I say a square bracket 0, that's the leftmost character, and a square bracket 1, that's the e, and so on. If I go out of bounds here, then that's an error. So I really need to just keep to within the bounds of the actual thing. So one last syntax I'll show you for this. This is a little less. So you can use the plus to put together. If I wanted to have a string, then whatever, I could use plus to put together. There's another form that uses C's printf syntax, where I could say like hi %s, and the %s is a placeholder where I'd like a string to go. And I could say like I have %d donuts. And so that's called a format string, and it's a good way of mixing in. You have this outer skeleton, and you want to sort of substitute in a few things. And so then you use the %sign, and then you combine it with what you want. So here I'll say Alice and 42. And so using this sort of % construct, you can have a string and sort of substitute values into it and to make a bigger string. This is not really ever required. You could always have gotten that result using plus to kind of put the string together, but it's fairly common to use this, so I'll just mention it. Last thing I'll say about strings is that the strings I'm showing you right here, these are not Unicode strings. Python's Unicode treatment has been like a little uneven, and in particular in Python 3 it changed a little bit, it got better. So for here I just want you to realize these are not Python strings, these are not Unicode strings, but and in the handout it talks about there's a slightly different route by which you create a Unicode string. But once you've got a Unicode string, then all the things I showed you still work. The square brackets, the len, the dot lower, all that kind of stuff. It's the same interface, it's just you create a slightly different way. And so but for our purposes, these will work. These strings essentially are just a series of bytes. It's just a byte things. All right. So it's almost. Let me just show you there. So I want to show you this one. How are we doing on time? Oh, excellent. I want to show you this last string feature, and then I want to block out time for our first exercise. So in order to show you this, I'm going to go to the PyQuick basics document. I'm going to, very high tech here, I'm going to attempt to There we go. It's just possible. I'm going to try and show the interpreter and that little bit of art that I put in the handout. Okay. Ooh, perfect. All right. So here, I'll set a equal to hello. So I've got the same string. So in that little piece of art, all I've done is I've drawn in the index numbers. So like a lot of languages in Python, things are, if I want to number a linear sequence of things, they're numbered from 0, starting to the left. So if I refer to a square bracket 0, that's the h. This is how I should have done it before. Or h square bracket 1, that's the e. Or if I say, what's the len of this thing, that's 5. So that's just sort of conventional indexing into something. Now, Python has a syntax for referring to not just a single element in a string like this, but a kind of a subpart of it. And this syntax is going to use the colon. So the way this is going to work is if I say a, and I'll put the square bracket, but I'm going to put a colon in the middle here, and then I'm going to indicate both the start and the end. So for example, if I say, well, I want you to start at 1, so that's the first index number, and then the second number is going to say it's going to go up to, but not including that one. In Python, this is called a slice. So if I say A13, that's the subpart of the string starting at the 1 and going up to, but not including the 3. This is called, so in Python it's called a slice. The word Pythonic is not a word I just made up. It's a real word in the nerderati. And this is a very Pythonic feature. Python likes having syntaxes which are sort of very short but crisp, and express something that a common thing you might want to do. So if I wanted to say hello, I guess I could say what is it? A of 1:5. Now that's a little weird. The 5 is kind of one out of bounds there, but actually what you can do in the slice syntax is if you omit the second, the thing after the colon, it just goes all the way through the end of the string. And if you omit the first one, it starts at the beginning. So actually it is a truism that if I just say square bracket, colon, square bracket, well, I just get the whole of whatever it was. So this is a very handy syntax. For example, if I want to remove the first letter, I could just say 1 colon. So well, instead of starting at 0, start at 1, and then just go through the end. So far that's like pretty neat. But now, so a little bit of scrolling. I'll show you the slightly other crazy thing it does. So, thus far I've just used the positive numbers, but in Python they also added a second set of numbers that also index into the string. So it's just using the negative numbers. And the negative numbers, instead of starting at the left, they start at the right. So -1 refers to the rightmost character, and -2 refers to the next one in, and -3 and so on. You can think of it essentially as there's an implicit len there, that the -1 essentially is saying len -1. Right? So len in this case is 5, len -1 is 4, or check out 4. So if you've ever written code in a zero-based system, it means that referring to things that happen to be at the left is very convenient, because like 0, 1, 2, you always know where you are. But then referring to things at the right is like a pain, because you always have to add len and subtract something. So the negative number scheme just also makes it convenient to refer to things on the right-hand side. And they work in slices too. So for example, how might I say that I want to omit, well here, first I'll just do my earlier example. So I could say, what was it, -4 colon -2. Oops, I'll put the A here. Now that's exactly equivalent to the one where earlier it was 1:3, right? The -4 is just another way of saying that. Now let's look at a more realistic example. Say, for example, I wanted to omit the last 3 characters of a string. I didn't know how long it was. I could just write that as colon -3, right? That it's going to go up to, but not including. I know -3 is the third in. So, or I could do it the other way. What if I only want the last 3 characters of a string? I can just write that as -3 colon So it just, I think syntactically, this is maybe looks a little bit weird, but I found slice syntax I found is just useful in a lot of situations. So I would encourage you to go ahead and actually learn this one. And we're going to have all these exercises and stuff in a little bit. Certainly, I have hidden inside of there little opportunities for you to end up wanting to use the slice syntax. So that is a nice way to get this stuff going. Okay, so that actually concludes the first lecture section. So what I would like you to do is pull up the exercises. And so if you go to the PyQuick page, let's do it here. It points to this page, PyQuick exercises. And then that explains how you copy, and I can, if you raise your hand, I'm happy to kind of walk on, how you can copy this set of directories. It's going to look like this. Let me show you what I want you to do. So inside of here, there's like day 1, day 2, and some other stuff. Today we're doing day 1. So go in the day 1 directory, and the first thing I want you to look at is there's this, there's a file in there called, oops, no, not that one. There's a file in there called string1.py. And I'm just going to look inside there. And so what this thing has is in the comments, I'll make this a bigger. There's some little exercises in here that just use the stuff in lecture that we've done so far. So for example, here's exercise A, Dr. Evil, and just in English, there's a little description of like what it is I want you to do, and it gives a little example, but then the code is just not done. And so your job is fill in the code there to actually compute what it's supposed to compute. There's a few of these things. And then at the bottom, I have filled in little bits of test code. And so you don't have to touch that. That's already done. It's just going to call the functions above and just kind of check that they return the right thing. So it's kind of a primitive form of unit testing. So if I run this thing right now, what it does is they all fail. Because, there's no code. And so what's going to happen is, as you fill those bits of function in, then some of these tests should start passing. You can just run it each time to just very quickly just get feedback about how it's going. So that is string 1. I'd like everyone to do string 1. If you are just so fast, you get a little bored, there's also string 2. And string 2 just contains more. And so optionally, if you have more time to fill, I'd be happy for you to go ahead and do that. The last thing I need to point out here, let's see, let's look at string 1 here. There's a thing I mentioned earlier that I never explained. This -tt flag. What that refers to is, in a Python file, what I would recommend is that you just always indent with spaces. That is the Google standard. Just always indent with 2 spaces. Okay. But in your editor, maybe by habit or whatever, you might accidentally hit the tab key. And if you have a Python file that has a mixture where it uses spaces in some places and tabs in other places, that is deeply confusing. Because visually, where the code appears to align may not correspond to how it really aligns as far as Python is concerned. So what the -tt flag does is if it ever finds a mixture of spaces and tabs, it just immediately halts. Which is, when you're on your first day of Python programming, that's absolutely what you want. So this will help you find the case where what you want to do, is the hand I've talked about, you want to set your editor so that if you ever hit the tab key, it understands to just put in spaces. But the -tt flag will protect you if you end up making a mistake in that regard. All right. So here's what I'd like to do. It's now 10:50. So I'm going to imagine I want you to work on this. We can do about a half hour for that. So that's what I'd like you to do is then go have lunch. So what I'd like you to do is be back in here. We have to do a little math here. Back in here at 1:15. And so I'm going to leave you some time for doing Python coding, and then some time for having lunch. Allow you to bounce that thing, and then of course I'm in here to answer questions or whatever during that whole time. All right, so please go ahead and get started with that.
Okay, so we can get out of here, come back into my OBS, and I will make myself big again. Hello. I see some light shooting up my nose. What is going on? It's like light. It's like a bright light that is, okay, that's better. Anyways, so that was an opportunity for us to, get into sort of the Google lecture, and this is again part of their 2-day course. So obviously now this is the time that he brings up that doing these exercises is the natural next step. So that is a great way to be able to now pull these up. So the next step that I have is to understand again whether it's the text file or the editor or the interpreter. I just need to select which one I'm using for myself on a PC and definitely select whichever one you're using. I did take some notes during that lecture. One was the Python string method, so to figure out sort of what all of those pre-written codes are to make things lowercase, make things capital, anything that has to do with sort of those preset ways you can edit a string. I'm creating a list of vocabularies of words that I was not familiar with before and I'm hearing for the first time, and words that we can use. So I wrote down the word Pythonic, which seems to mean short and crisp code, but I will officially look it up. Obviously, we're learning about, in this particular section, is about strings. And then we learned within strings you can have slices. And then he talked about the Python editor and interpreter. He doesn't mention which one he's using, but again, within the course, they did mention the ones Notepad++, and then GI edit, and then a third one that they're in that instructions kind of in setting up. So my task right now is to go ahead and figure out which one I want to use before getting into the doing these actual exercises. And I was glad to see this again. Maybe it's getting easier, because the first time I took a look at those lessons, I was like, I don't quite know how to do these problems just yet and how to write that code. But I think if it may take watching it over again and going through the review sheet again, but that's all there for you. And so I will again just put the link in the chat to the
informally, but I never really explained them, so I want
to the course, so that you know where I am and what I'm basing all of this off of. So I'm going to put that in the chat. Okay, so then that's where this course is based off of. And I think that I feel like I have and am continuing to learn a lot. And so I just want to sort of set the expectation of what I'm going to be doing with my lives regarding data science going forward. So number one, I'm just trying to figure out camera, sound, lighting, just OBS Studio on the back end for live streaming, so I'm not having as much technical difficulties and it is cleaner. I will continue to the best of my ability to go live. I will be back on Monday for my next live. I'm going to work out some technical stuff in the meantime. I'm getting new headshots taken on Saturday in New York City. And so just going to kind of run into the city for that. But I also want to sort of say that I want to go through this course start to finish. I want to just get to the end of what's here. And then I'm actually going to want to jump into our studio and then Tableau. And again, I want to kind of set a foundation of some of sort of the beginning. And then we can sort of, once we sort of know how to start with everything, then we can build. And I do believe very strongly that a lot of the language and a lot of the concepts do roll from platform to platform. So they will build on it. And so I think that just because this week was really focused on having us get set time, learning the OBS software and going live, that I'll go faster but I'm also going to sort of start a little bit more at the beginning, but with a better sense of knowing that editor interpreter is, fundamental to this, and then we, just again kind of summarizing it with my top takeaways. And again, you can do this with me. You're welcome to join this community. Feel free to subscribe and like, but also you're also welcome to do this on your own. The resources that I'm finding, I will readily share with you so that you can also go through them on your own. Additionally, as it relates to going down the Python path, once we finish this course, there were 3 other courses that Google recommended that I'm also going to do a similar kind of review and go through and share. Whether we end up doing the whole piece of the course together, or I just, refer it or do highlights from it, we shall see. But when we start seeing resources, I will be readily sharing them. And then as my channel grows, I'll start moving some of this stuff onto some different channels so they're a little bit more micro-focused. But just because of at the very, very beginning of building a channel on YouTube, I am going to sort of concentrate everything onto one channel. And then, like I said, once that momentum goes, once I work through the technical issues and I've just figured out how to be a better content producer and streamer, then I will sort of start parsing things out in some very kind of niched directions, because I do have quite a few ideas of things that I want to share and communicate. So I will be back for another live that's going to be my effort in supporting Ukraine. Some of it's going to be language learning, some of it will be sort of news and current events, some of it will be geopolitics stuff. I'm just going to, it is my kind of Ukraine hour, and so learning Ukrainian is part of that, but I also do gather quite a bit of news. I've just been doing quite a bit of historical research, and so things that I'm learning, I will be sharing, but that's my kind of support Ukraine hour, and that is at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. So I will be live for that tonight at 9:30 Eastern, and I just appreciate everybody's patience with me. If you do end up peeking into these videos after the fact, you get to see what a very beginning of something looks like. I keep learning more. I think just as much as I want to learn Python, I really need to learn OBS, because I feel like I have fell into probably a few common mistakes that are easily fixable once I get a sense of how the OBS software works. And I have done quite a bit of investigation, and everybody who talks streaming talks OBS. It's been around for a while, and it's the the main one. I do use StreamYard a bit, but what I don't like about StreamYard is that my location on the screen is fixed, where this one gives me a little bit more control of what size and kind of where it goes, which when I'm wanting to share my screen seems better. And now that I definitely want to do a 2-camera setup, also think that that's going to be much better. So yeah, my job is to figure out how to not only educate, but entertain, inform, inspire, and I'm very happy with that, and excited to again go sharing this, because as soon as I get back into class next week, I will be opening up ArcGIS again. So that's yet another software that will be on deck. And for those who don't have the software, you can get an individual license, and also when they do the massive open online courses, the MOOCs, they do provide access, or at least limited access, to some of those softwares, so you can kind of get in and get some practice with them. My biggest comment and note, like why I'm sort of self-studying this, is I'm noticing, and I'm not, and I get it, just because it seems like there's a lot of information that goes into each of the buckets of GIS versus data science, but I'm feeling like the GIS is being so peeled off and so separated from just general data science, and I am feeling that for myself, I want a foundation in both. And actually, if anything, I'm actually finding it a bit frustrating that we're not getting a broader sense. Now, I don't know if that's because people already come into the field with some of that basic knowledge, or because they just feel like, hey, the GIS and the Esri community and family is so big and so deep and so wide we don't want to like give people more to do and confuse them, or it really is just like, yeah, if you want to learn that, you need to learn that by yourself. I'm not sure why they're just this fork in the road, and they just seem to be like totally, the people who do just general data science aren't doing anything that's sort of spatially oriented, and the people who are doing stuff that's spatially oriented, I don't feel are, like, I guess I'm saying, I'm feeling like my brief introduction to these, they're feeling like they're on different planets, and I am not satisfied with that. So I am learning spatial data science, and I want to learn traditional data science, sort of in some basic elements of computer programming, which is why we're here, because I only have what they give me at school, which I love, and it's a great program. But again, I'm seeing kind of from my own interests and directions that I want to go, I'm seeing kind of the missing pieces that I know I need to fill in on my own. And I'm happy to do that. And so I'm committed to sort of, like I said, an hour conversation every day. So I'm just going to chat a little longer to round out this conversation. And just, I was doing a list of kind of like everything that I'm doing this year, and there's a lot on the list for this year. I'm excited about it, and I think that it's going to be a lot of fun, but it's going to get me to be really, really busy. And I'm excited about learning, and I'm very aware of this process of having a learning transformation and being uncomfortable, not knowing, being uncomfortable just having to figure things out. I used an editing software yesterday that I do for audio editing, and it crashed on me, and it sort of motivated me to be like, wait a second, I have this whole Adobe suite and I get the student discount on it, so I really need to get in and learn how to do the Adobe suite. And some of the Adobe suite might, I don't really actually think it's going to fully replace other things that I use, but I need to get more comfortable working with those. So I think that's probably one of my big goals for the year, is just learn how to use software. So whether it's Python, R, Tableau, SQL, Advanced Excel, but it's also learning to learn ArchiCAD, SketchUp, maybe a little bit of Blender, and also these editing softwares for audio, for video. So I have, and Photoshop. So even though I use Canva, I think Photoshop could basically take it to another level. And so could Premiere Pro. And just kind of like exploring. So yeah, learning a software is a big piece of my learning transition. And then of course I train in martial arts, so I'm looking forward to some advancement tests this year. And then just being a creative. So not only learning how to use this video software, but finding stories, writing stories, sharing stories, learning how to present, how to speak, how to engage, how to build community. So I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be new, and it still pulls on some things that are from my background, but my previous work in media and arts and entertainment, I don't ever feel like it needs to go on my resume. I feel like it's something more to show than to speak about. I think I'm better off just doing what I've learned and things that I know. So it's about showing up with consistency. And so last year I just I had too much going on to be able to really settle in. I had other commitments that are now completed, so now that I can sort of be present and be here and be on this particular journey. And it'll reveal itself, kind of which pieces of content go where and when. But I figure I can't know what to improve until I start. And so we're the 6th day of the new year, and I'm just joyful that I have had the opportunity to begin, and that and have show up with a bit of consistency, and just share the fact that I'm learning this, and it's very learnable. Oh, and the other piece of what we also want to go through and learn is that with the data science and data analysis, we need math. I need to refresh a whole bunch of math. And I know that there's some great courses, and I have tons of books and tons of things that can help us do that. So again, part of just what I'm on about this year is just this whole sort of learning journey that is part of technology, that's parts of math and science, that's part of empowering women, that's part of just telling my own story and continuing on as a graduate student, and then following my own personal interests related to urban planning, climate impact, geopolitics, supporting Ukraine, and that's all part of my conversation. And just, I love software, I love certain brands and businesses that I just want to shout out about and give props because I use them and I think they're valuable, and if you have certain things to do, that they can be incredibly helpful for that. So those are all things that are in my line of and learning languages. There's a lot on my plate. There's no lack of things. So I think also learning just how to learn efficiently, and part of it is showing up with discipline. So I think that even though the goal of learning how to be a creator, learning how to be a streamer, I also feel like just even for myself, the fact that I'm committing an hour a day to learning data science and then inviting in a community to come learn it with me, and the supporting maths and the supporting and then my whole interest in supporting Ukraine and what I want to do there. And so just working together to sort of further ourselves and our understanding and our knowledge, and just figuring out how to get the most efficient quick start and growth and like building that we can. But I do get a sense, because I have read a few, and I'll recommend the ones that I'm reading, data science books, and no matter what aspect of data science they're in, or data analysis, they're a lot of the same concepts of these strings and these lists, and just matching data sets, and all these things are sort of seem to be very they'll build in each other pretty quickly, I think, once we kind of get moving and get going. So this was just week one. I think it is a beginning. I have a lot of work to do, but I'm pleased and proud of where we've begun, and the fact that I wanted to do this for so long, and I finally was like, yes, I know where I can put this in my schedule. I know how I can do this. So data science is going to be during the week, Monday through Friday. If for some reason there's a day of the week that I can't do, I may do a makeup session on a weekend, but for the most part, this is going to be a weekday stream. So look for me for at 12:30 Eastern, Monday through Friday, talking data science, and just like I said, all those parts, pieces, software that we want to learn that are in the data world. That is what we're going to be going through. And I've just hit the top of the hour, so I'll end it here, and I look forward to seeing you all on Monday and sharing other videos, insights, opportunities, what I see and how I think it can benefit you in your learning journey as well.